Thank you. When I started my position as an assistant professor at University of Hong Kong, I had all kinds of things that I wanted to promote. And many of them are mass mobilizing students as early as second year undergraduates to do more open science, to do more hands-on research. And we've had like relatively good success in that almost everything that we tried worked. With that said, in the last 2-3 years of the pandemic, especially with the zero COVID policy in Hong Kong, I had a lot of time, many quarantines, to sit with myself in a room and think, what am I doing? Is this really going somewhere? What kind of impact am I having? And I think one of the things that really got me is that in the pandemic we had an opportunity to really step up and help. And finally, policymakers came to us and said, okay, so now we need you. Please come help us. What can you offer? And then most of us are like, we're not really sure. Give us funding for 5-10 years. We'll go do some research. We'll run some stuff, and then we'll come back to you with some insights. And when we thought we had some insights, like for example, in the Twitter community, every time you thought you have an insight, a lot of people are like, no, but it's more complicated. No, you need to do this. No, we were not prepared. And for me, I really needed, open science. I want to promote this. I want to do science better. But there's just so many challenges. And it really also helped me think about, so where do I want this to lead? So in the next 3 to 5 years, what would I like to do if I am to continue an academic career? So what else do I want to do with the students, with the community, with everybody else? So I have a bunch of thoughts about the world's major challenges and how to do more credible, optimized research. And in Norn, I had the chance to talk to the group about how we can do this through open science. But this talk is a slightly different angle. Here I'm going to talk about how we can have more impact. So assuming credible open science and all of that, which we need, that's the infrastructure, what is it that we can do as scientists, as educators, as people in general? So I'll just give a very brief example of some of the challenges of the things that I see around me, and I'm taking specifically a paradigm of a movement called effective altruism, which has had some challenges in the past year with all sorts of scandals like FTX of people that support this movement. But overall, I like the paradigm because it helps me to think better about all sorts of things that we do in science, effectiveness, and all sorts of cognitive biases. And I just want to break this down to how I am thinking about these issues. So I want to raise 4 different ways in which I think I would like to increase my impact, and I invite you to consider these about your own career. So we're gonna talk about how to have an impactful career, how to change what we do in this career if we're a scientist or an educator. How do we understand as judgment decision making in a business school and in psychology departments? How can we understand effectiveness and altruism a little bit better? And then what can we do in order to embed this in our education system? So we have all these big challenges. One of the things that we just mentioned in the brief discussion we've had before this talk is like, how do we prioritize? How do we really measure impact? How do we know which is the most important thing for us? And increasingly, since 2022, I try to shift all of my education. So I revamped all of the courses in order to move away a little bit from open science and work with students on leveraging psychological science to understand all of this topic about morality, responsibility, risks, benefits, and so forth. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. The title of this whole thing is Doing More Good and Doing Good Better. This is not my slogan. This is the effective altruism slogan that I combined and I'm going forward with. Why effective altruism as a paradigm for this? Because there's certain things, whatever criticism you might have of their priorities and how they do what it is that they do, there are certain things that I really like which kind of seem very similar to what I believe in from open science. So complete transparency, inviting others as a community to come and pitch in and attack your ideas and getting some input. A lot of community engagement and checking ourselves all the time. So I'll start with a very simple paradigm that effective altruism, I think, does very well, and I implement this with my students. The question is, if I'm a student and I need to choose my career now, I'm an undergraduate and I need to choose a topic, or I need to choose what major I'm doing, or even when I already have some kind of training, what should I choose? What should I do with this? So about career choice and what work we choose to do. So Effective Altruism has a bunch of books, but these are the two that I really recommend about doing good better. And 80,000 hours is the amount of time that we have in our career in order to contribute more. And they offer a lot of tools. So actually they would sit with any one of you in order to talk to you about your careers and try to think together with you how you might increase your impact in what it is that you do, in what it is that you're passionate about. And I really like this because for the first time, I think since forever, somebody sat down with me and tried to break it down for me how to think about my career. Is there like an equation that we can think about what things matter? So it seems like we care about the career capital, supportive conditions we want like a beautiful business school, and we want to be in a country that it's very easy for us to get places and do all sorts of things. And personal fit, of course, is a very good thing as a multiplier. So the better the fit that we have between us and the society, the more we can achieve. But in the middle, of course, there's impact. There's the pressing problems and having a right approach. So combining all these together, you can even have all kinds of weights. You can put this in an Excel and work together with the students about what each one of those mean, and then personal fit, and have them calculate for the different careers that they're choosing, what is it that they would like to focus on. And then for each one of these career options, adopt a scientist mindset about thinking, planning, exploring, investigating, putting this to a real test like a scientist, and then adjusting if an adjustment is needed. So if you want to see how I do this with students, actually we sit down together in the last session of my courses and we do a career plan and we talk about some of these issues in order to give the students the opportunity to go through these before they graduate and move on to the next step. Many of them come to me in the fourth year and they say, no, but it's too late. I'm 20 years old, I'm fourth year, there's nothing more that I can do. My entire life is already set. I'm like, I've changed my career 5 times. I'm not sure that this is, I'm going to stay with this. Maybe I'll change again. You can definitely change. Actually, the world is like a buffet of options. Each one of them has a different kind of thing that you can try. Just go and try things for yourself. What can we do in our career? So we try to put kind of like weights and try to measure what kind of impact we might have. So these are not my slides, so don't judge this and look at the specific numbers. But let's say, for example, a doctor in the US, how many lives can be saved in a lifetime? Let's say 5, I think more, but let's say 5. But then what can you do if you find a cure for a drug? It goes from like 5 to a lot more. And then if you have something that's very impactful, you can have 10 million people or perhaps even more. So, of course, being a doctor is terrific, but also being a scientist has the potential of impact that goes beyond that. And not just in the medical sciences, but also, I think, in the business school and in psychology, if we come with a paradigm that helps people do better. So the good news is, as a scientist, as an educator, as admin, as somebody who's supporting all these staff, you're already in a very good position to have a lot of impact in your career. And I think the effective altruism paradigm helps you to see and quantify that impact with some exercises that you can do with your students. How can we increase impact? How to do things that matter? Here I'm going to pitch meta-science, so doing large-scale collaborations. I think Norn is trying to a little bit get to that, to leveraging all together. At the very least, sharing information, getting everybody together talking. This already has a little bit of impact, but I'll tell you a little bit about what I decided to do 2021 and how it has affected things about the way that I work. So if we look at what is the most impactful way for us to achieve our goals, I think it's collaboration, which might seem very intuitive, but I think many people don't follow up on this intuition. So this is an example from Psychological Science Accelerator. I guess people in Norway are invested in this. I see a lot of Norwegian names and people in Norwegian institutions come to this. So you can already see this is the main paper that's introducing the Psychological Science Accelerator. A lot of people are involved, many of them early career researchers and students. So it's really inspiring. It's almost like a grassroots movement where you can take part in anything. It's not like you need to do the entire project on your own, 1-2 papers a year from beginning to end. But if you specialize in, let's say, collecting data or going over drafts, you can do that part. And everybody gets credit for what it is that they do. And the synergy of everybody together creates this beautiful, amazing, impactful project. So the people, the physicists in, let's say, CERN in Switzerland have been doing this for a while now because they have to if they want to have enough money to measure things that they need. But we as psychologists can also do this, and it's amazing that we haven't done this. We're still working out the way of how we work together, and it's inspiring to see 2018 this coming out and setting the path. I'm just going to show you 3 examples for high impact things that came out during the COVID pandemic. So you can see the list is very, very long. I'm somewhere here, but it's just incredible to see how they all come together. And within a very short time, when we are still trying to okay, maybe we'll do a study on this, maybe we'll do a study on that, they were able to achieve this within a month, talking about all sorts of things about how to how to frame things differently, reconstruct or repurposing, and seeing whether this can overcome all sorts of things like emotions during the pandemic. So if our aim is to ease people's pain and help them deal with some personal crisis, then what is the best way to do this? How to go about this? So 20,000 people, data collected. It's an amazing collaboration, also high impact in terms of what we typically consider as reputable journals. Another one is like PNAS in the global experiment of motivating social distancing. Very complicated political topic, but a lot of people coming together in order to measure what is the right way to frame a message so that you'll get people on board. And this is the kind of advice I think that policymakers have expected us to deliver during the COVID pandemic, but we really haven't. Yes, please.
How did it work? Can you explain? Was it driven by the first author and then who coordinated all of the efforts, or is there some network infrastructure platform that actually facilitates this?
Now there is. Now there is a PSA governing board, I would say. Early career researchers, they even have some funding. There is a whole process about how you can suggest a study. And then you have the support of, I think, something like 200 labs around the world from 80 countries. So you can propose, anybody can propose, each one of you can propose a study. It goes through a selection, and then if it's endorsed, and right now there's quite a few of those, then they handle this for you. So basically you come up with a good idea, you submit this to them, and they push this forward. Now they have the infrastructure laid out.
There is an institution, but it's not PNAS.
No. PNAS is the journal where this was published. No, it's completely different. They're part of the open science community, so we can talk afterwards about how that happens. But they're doing an amazing job. One last one also came out, like amazing to see from different countries, the differences about behavioral intentions, information seeking, and anxiety, seeing this kind of impact. This is all to show that we can achieve beautiful things if we just collaborate together. I have a slightly different angle on these collaborations. I participate in those, but just like mentioned, I also have a team that I created with the students, with early career researchers, that even in Norway we have a few members, so hopefully it's growing. And I presented this, so now we have a big team science conference. This was the first one in 2022. The next one is already you can sign up for this, it's in October. So I presented my view of what core team is, so collaborative open science research. So I have a different paradigm where I work separately with early career researchers and then leverage the education that I do with students in order to study different phenomena in judgment decision making. So we have some talks on that I gave to Norn previously, and we can talk about how I do this sort of thing. If you want to join one of these mass collaborations, there's actually a lot of these things going on. Replicat, the Center of Open Science, does a bunch of things with DARPA score. Many babies, many labs, experimental economists do stuff. EEG, if you do EEG. So now there's many opportunities for you to join this kind of collaboration. And just want to show you, I've never imagined that me contributing to one of these would lead to actual publications. For me, I'm just happy to do the data collection, go over some drafts, and contribute. But you can see an unintended consequence is that my university that always complained that I'm not publishing in these PNAS and Nature Human Behavior and all this, I did not even have to do too much. I'm one of 200 co-authors in all of these things that come out, and even in 2023 it keeps going. So each one of you can join one of these in order to have collaborative impact, in order to get to these things. Fort is another good example for a community that does amazing things in open science. In core team, and this is what I did in my last talk, we do a bunch of things like replications and extensions, we do science assessments, and we develop a lot of community resources, and we can talk about that as well. So these were the first two. So choosing a career, and then once you're in the career, perhaps leveraging the power of collaboration. The third thing that I want to talk about that I do in my own research is to move into studying, move from what it is that I'm doing into studying human psyche about effectiveness in altruism. So actually tomorrow we're going to have a replication workshop where we're going to do replications about effectiveness in altruism. So if you or your student, anybody that you know wants to join, it's going to be a 2-day workshop, and we're going to do stuff together on that. Effective altruism, Peter Singer presents this kind of dilemma. So right now I have this really nice Airbnb next to a nice canal. It's beautiful. So let's say I'm dressed up to the business school with my great, I don't know, LV suit, whoever makes good suits in Norway. And then I see that a little girl fell into the canal and is about to drown. But I paid good money for this suit, so I'm having a dilemma. Should I jump in with my suit, be late for a business talk, to talk to you? Or, what's more important, my suit and this meeting or the little girl's life? So when you present this to people, what do people normally say? Of course, you should go in and save that little girl. What is $1,000? What is being late to a meeting or not having a meeting compared to a human person's life? And we studied this as judgment decision-making people. But of course, there's lots of girls in many places around the world right now who are drowning, and we can save them. So this one, for example, is in South America, and she needs our help. She doesn't even need $1,000 US. She can do it with a lot less than that in order to lift her up from the canal, the pond that she fell into just by being born. So is it okay that we emphasize this girl in front of us that just fell over this girl that's far away? So this is a tricky thing to present to people, and I know that Peter Singer uses that paradigm a lot, but I can see the emotional reactions of people and a lot of objections. It's like immediately, no, something here doesn't make sense because I'm a really good person and I really care about all these people in the world, but come on, it's not the same. There's a big difference between this one and this one. So what I like about effective altruism, and I use this paradigm as judgment decision making, is that I want to understand what are the differences between this and this, and what can we do in order to address each and every one of these differences so that we will all care. Everybody around the world, we will care about human lives wherever those may be, and not just human lives or human lives that are now, but we would care about human lives till the end of time, and not just human lives, but any lives. So it could be like animals or everything else. Global, environment and stuff like that. So this is an example from Peter Singer and his book. But right now, 5.4 million children, I think this is a few years ago, under the age of 5, died in 2017, with the majority of the death being from preventable and treatable causes. So I like this quote that these kids don't die from the disease, they die from poverty and us not helping them. So it's very emotionally draining. If you spend a lot of time thinking about this, you don't know what to do with this. It's very overwhelming. And this is also the stuff that we talk about. But I feel like it's important that we talk about these things with our students and that we discuss this among ourselves. What is going on here? Why some things elicited very strong emotions and empathy, where some other things do not? And Peter Singer, philosopher, has published a lot, wrote these 2 books. So if you want to know more about that, you can go and read those. And he asks, does it really matter that you, whether you walk next to a kid that's drowning, does it really matter that it's close to you or not? One of the exercises that I do with the Hong Kong students is just by the mere fact that we were born in Hong Kong or in Norway, we are already very privileged. I think we know this, but we don't understand it. So one of the things that we do is that I ask them to go into Pledge and Impact Calculator and make all sorts of calculations. For example, how rich am I? So even as a graduate from BI or a graduate from Hong Kong University, which is considered kind of like an Ivy League Asian university, just by the mere fact that you came from that, you're already the top 1% of everybody in terms of salary. So people can calculate how much they're going to earn. So this is like a graduate salary. It's not even like a mean salary. It's not even like a typical salary in Hong Kong. And then you can see that you're richer than 99% of the world. So I get them to think about, first of all, where they are, and then what to do with this kind of thing. And then to compare the little girl from here to the little girl from here, and then for us to, together, try to understand what is the difference. What gets us to spend $1,000 to a drowning child near us, but not $1,000 for dying children in South America. And there's increasingly more and more research done on this. Many of them are early career researchers that care about effective or ineffective altruism. So we try and map out the different factors in psychology, judgment, decision making that are obstacles to effective giving. How can we get people to think about this more clearly? So there's all sorts of things that you can do when you conduct research in order to try and tie the research question that you have into real high impact questions that have the ability to help people to make such a decision. So for example, some people really don't understand the differences between the impact of charities. They think, oh, all charities are about the same. One charity does, I don't know, this kind of impact, and the other charity is maybe 3 times more, maybe a third, but this is kind of like the range. Effective altruism tries to quantify all sorts of things to show you that some charities are 100 times more effective than the others. So if we contribute our money to the lower impact charities, we're losing out on a very big chunk of impact that we could have had. So getting students to think about what impact is, using the paradigm for us to try and establish what is effectiveness, how do we measure performance for charities. So effective altruism, GiveWell, started from, they had a lot of money that they made as hedge fund managers. And they said, we want to give this to a charity, but we want to really maximize the impact of the money that we have. Where should we give this to? So many people say, I don't know, Red Cross. Or maybe people say, give this to that charity, this famous charity, that famous charity. But when they sent them questions, so for example, I give you $1 million. What are you going to do with this? Turns out that charities are not very good at telling you what it is that they're planning to do. They're not very good at delivering transparency reports about what happens with the $1 million at the end. So I really like this kind of research that's coming out from this group. Some of the work that we've done, so we've mapped a lot of biases about this. Some of it we're going to do tomorrow. Replications, so for example, omission bias, preference for indirect harm. So I'll give you two examples. So from the research, our inaction and our indirect harm. So for example, this is one of the replications that we've done. And in this replication, we try to see how people look at harm. So if somebody did harm through action, so they caused the harm by doing something, or they caused the harm by preventing themselves from doing something, so not reporting something. Do people evaluate this differently? So definitely people evaluate harm done through commission, through action, as being a lot higher than omission, through inaction. So generally when we do harm, we try to hide it through inaction, or sometimes we don't perceive that us not acting has potential harm, or we just don't evaluate this to be as high as some of the other things. So I think we can apply this to many things. We can think about climate change, global warming, all sorts of other things that we should act, and just think if we don't act, we're not responsible. And there's all sorts of cognitive bias that come from that, which we try to address. Here specifically, the context was, so omission bias was originally from vaccinations. So in the 1990s, they tried to get parents to vaccinate their kids. Many parents would not vaccinate their kids because they would say, if I vaccinate my kid and something bad happens, there's a side effect, I am responsible. But if I don't vaccinate my kid and somehow they get sick, I did not cause the sickness, it just happened to them. So I am not responsible. So of course you're responsible as a parent in both cases, but somehow we see not acting as having less of an accountability for that. And of course during the pandemic, when we came out with this thing, we just thought this is so ironic, so I think was 2020. So in 2020, when this finally came out, suddenly there's a pandemic and people don't want to vaccinate because of side effects. So there's a lot of things going on there, misinformation, what do we know about vaccines, how fast, all of that. But the main issue has to do with omission bias, about how we weigh all the different risks that we have and our fear of acting and then leading to harm, and our acceptance of, okay, if we don't act and there is harm, okay, it's not us. So it's interesting. We also did a meta-analysis on this. I thought there's going to be like hundreds of studies. Actually, very few studies. So this is an underappreciated line of research. So for example, 13 articles on omission bias. How can that be? We really expected to find hundreds. So we really need to understand the psychology behind all of that a little bit better. So there's an opportunity here. Same thing with indirect harm. I'm not going to go into this, but when we cause harm indirectly, it seems to be less bad than if we cause this directly. My main message here is that it's a very important topic. There's lots of practical implications. We can do a lot more about this in the judgment decision making in business schools and in psychology. Very, very briefly on what we're going to do tomorrow, donating to save lives. So we show this in a between subject design. Some people are asked, how much would you donate to save Rokia? Some people are only shown, how much would you spend in order to save Rokia and Musa? What would you expect? If we value life the same way, then people would spend double in order to save Rokia and Musa compared to Rokia. But it could also be that people have a limit, so they already give their maximum. So maybe it's just the same. Rokia and Musa are the same. What are your predictions about what actually happens? And this is a classic finding in judgment decision making. Think about this. Another example, not with humans, but with birds. Save 2,000 birds or save 20,000 birds. If you spend 80 on 2,000 birds, how much would you spend on 20,000 birds? It's 10 times more, right? How would you adjust per that? So another classic study. How much would you spend? So this is the interesting thing. People would spend less, not the same, spend less when there's more people involved. So just Rokia, just Musa on their own, there's a certain number, but then Rokia and Musa, people spend less. And we need to understand, why is this happening? So people have a limit to their ability to empathize. And somehow when there's more and more happening, at least the main claim is that we reduce our ability to empathize and give to that. We're completely overwhelmed. So we would like tomorrow to do some replications on this to see whether this really happens or not. How about birds? It seems like it doesn't matter, 2,000, 20,000 birds, it's about the same kind of number. I also ran this in my courses, so I run this on my students in my classroom. So I ask them to make predictions, and then we do the actual in-class exercise. So almost all of my classes are for us to run experiments on ourselves. We make predictions, we run this together in the classroom, then we look at the results, and then we try to understand what happened here, right? So this is the interesting thing. It's a great replication. So Rokia alone, 308 Hong Kong dollars, which is about the same as Norwegian currency. So 300. Rokia and Musa are much less than that. If you compare people to birds, then you can see 2,000 birds less than that, 2 million birds a lot less than that. So this is very odd. It's a very interesting discussion to have with your students. So you're welcome to come and join us tomorrow for us to do these replications and understand this sort of thing more. Last thing I'm going to touch on, I don't know how much time, yeah, okay. Last thing, how to embed impact in education. So I get my students to collaboratively work on issues. So the way that I see education is problem-based learning rather than them hearing from me what I think the truth is. I invite them to join me on a journey. I present them with a problem, and together we try to figure things out. I also was very clear to my students, I don't know much about effective altruism. I don't know what impact is. I want to learn with you, so I'm going to use this opportunity as an educator for us to figure this out together. So I revamped my courses to invite the students in order to write books, and they wrote books. So I just set up a Google Doc. I had different domains with different chapters. So for example, career choice, or poverty, or health, or existential risks, or AI. And then I gave this to them as a problem, and then I said, go look at the paradigms from effective altruism, psychological science. Let's bridge everything together in order to have a book on how to leverage psychological science for effective altruism. And they did a really good job. You can go and have a look. The links are here, 200 plus pages on very detailed reports. And it's amazing if you give undergraduates the opportunity to work on problems like that, they really deliver. If you want to see how I do this, you can go and check out the syllabus. It's a very long syllabus, like 40 pages, where I try and really set the path for us to tackle issues of impact together with the students. So there's no one clear way in order to achieve impact. I actually want them to help me to understand how to achieve impact. For example, in evaluating and comparing charities, so GiveWell twice a year invites people to attack their methodology, saying this is how we evaluate human lives right now. So they're very transparent about this. Tell us if we are wrong. So I got the students, first of all, to go over this and then to suggest all sorts of things. And then just participating, you get something like 500 euros if it's like a well-done report. But the second prize that they give in GiveWell is something like $20,000. So I think it's very exciting for the students to take part in something like that. So it's all on YouTube if you want to see what that looks like. And then if you have, let's say, $1,000 and you're thinking, I really want to have impact in the world, and I show you this list of charities, Give Directly gives this as cash directly to the people people with poverty, mostly in Africa. Wildlife, new incentives about giving people money in order to vaccinate their kids. Does that work? Clean Air Task Force. So this is very overwhelming already, and we only have 9 here. Charities, there's like tens of thousands of them. And I would ask you, which one would you choose? Which one do you think has the best impact? And we play these kinds of games in the classroom with real money. So giving what we can in effective altruism actually gives educator real money to play with their students, and students can use, each one of them gets $10 and they can choose where to donate this to. So you can actually see how we did this in the classroom. So they, giving what we can, donated in the name of Hong Kong students after they had a discussion of which one of those charities to donate to. So we can have an open discussion about what actually is impactful. What should we emphasize? What is higher priority? So this is stuff that you can very easily do. You just need to write to them and say, we have 100 students. We would like to play the giving game in the classroom, and they would donate on your behalf with certificates at the end and give you transparency reports about how this affected things at the end. So to summarize everything that I just discussed, I know it was very brief, but we can go deeper into each and every one of those. I can give you more links and more resources. But we can start from helping our students and ourselves understanding what is an impactful career. And already, just by the mere fact that we're here, that we're in an education system, that we're educators and scientists, and we understand the system, we already have the potential for impact. Increasing collaboration, so not just us, 1, 2 papers in fluorescent light punching the keyboard in our offices, but really having collaboration, so going around the world, meeting people, working on things together, and really stepping up when there's something that's happening like pandemic or global warming, climate change, existential risks. Studying, you can come and join us tomorrow to study more effectiveness and altruism. You can start from replications and extensions, or you can join the many people who are working on this now in order to really tackle how to increase the effectiveness of the way that we do altruism and charitable giving. And finally, there are lots of opportunities. You can take everything that I did with my students. If there's anything else, there's lots of people out there, especially in effective altruism, that are trying to do more. Take all of that, implement as much as you want with your students, and then if you need some help, we're happy to collaborate in order to try new things. And we're going to do some more exciting things in the upcoming semester. Everything that I just told you about, you can scan this or go to my website. Everything is there, available for you. All of my teaching and all of my research, everything is open in the spirit of open science. If you want to talk to me about any of these topics, this is my email. We also have a mailing list, so every 2 months or so, I send out an update about everything open science, everything effective, impact related. So you can keep up to date, and then if there's specific activities or things that you like, you can write to me and of course, join our team. Thank you.
I have one very specific question about your class sizes. How many students are there?
So I give 3 kinds of classes. I will do another one, a new one in the upcoming semester. But so far, it's all been undergraduate courses. Second year undergraduate fundamentals of social psychology is about 80 students. So a fairly basic class introducing social psychology. And then I do advanced social psychology, which is 4th year capstone. I don't know if you have capstones, but that's the more advanced research-oriented kind of thing. So we do real science projects in those classes, and those are 20 to 25. And I have 2 sessions of those. And then I started an elective, which is 3rd year or 4th year, they can choose, on judgment decision making, and those could be 40 students. So fundamentals, 70, 80, judgment decision making, 40, and then advanced social psychology, 2 sessions of 25 students. Something like that.
Do you think it's possible to scale up this?
I think, yeah, the university has been talking to me about scaling this up. You definitely can, but you need to be, I think, a little bit more humble about your ambitions, because your ability to really manage this, I am already overloaded. It's very, very difficult. I have amazing teaching assistants, but I am really, struggling to do this. You would need some good infrastructure in place in order to achieve that. I don't have a lot of experience with running these the core courses in the first, second year, but they really are looking to doing that. So hopefully this does scale. I have not had any experience with this, but I think at the very least, the things like, for example, the giving games or the collaborative books, this definitely can. Running research projects with the students, it's more complicated. You need attention, you need to really guide them through that. So for that, you need more compact courses, unless you have a lot of very well-trained educators to help you with that. Yeah, I'm really hoping.
By infrastructure.
Yeah, so for me, I execute things very well within the domain that I have with 2 teaching assistants. One is one that's been with me for a very long time, and one that keeps changing all the time. I can manage that. If you have a course of, let's say, 300 people, 500 people, you need to be able to have teaching assistants that don't require a lot of guidance, know how to work with one another, have experience in being independent and executing things with the students with no oversight. So, yeah, you need to form a team that knows how to work well together. You need the classroom infrastructure, so it's not just any class. It needs to be a class where we can separate into groups very easily, and yeah, there's all sorts of technical things, but I think it's mostly about human resources that would allow you to, with the right knowledge and with the right enthusiasm in order to execute this well. Yeah. But I guess that's every course. I don't know if it's unique to this one, but this one just requires a little bit more attention and guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, we did actually have for one example, we did have a course that was about sustainable events, organizing sustainable events. And I think there was one teaching assistant or practitioner that was very involved, and she ended up working like loads more than she was. Well, they proposed in the beginning, and they ended up not giving the course anymore. And there was also this discussion of how many points that we're getting from the course, and they wanted like a 15-point course, but they ended up getting a 7.5 course. So I think there's a lot of these great initiatives that ends up not continued because of that, because of the resource situation.
Yeah, I think the way that I did this is like I didn't go from 0 to, I don't know if it's 100, but 0 to something in one day. I really started small, pre-tested things, one semester, saw how things happen. If things worked, I adopted. If they didn't work, I kicked them out. So it was a very incremental process over 4 or 5 years. The effective altruism impact effectiveness things in the classroom, it was the first time that I executed this last semester. So that was like our pre-test. And I wanted to see if this it works well or not. And now that I know what works and what doesn't, I am going to make some adjustments and then try to increase the scope, the scale, and the complexity, focusing. So got rid of things that seem like noise, but went deeper into things that I thought worked and matter, to try to make them a little bit more comprehensive. So I think really need to start small and very humble aims. And then after you've established that as a proof of concept, then you can go from 7 points to 15 points, or then you can really show we're actually having an impact on society, we're having an impact on academic literature, we have an impact on the university, give us more funding. So actually, the university, I was very content, still am content on doing things within my little bubble of my courses. The university, seeing what I'm doing with my students, approached me saying, we would like to scale this up. We would like to grow this. What do you think we should do? So if you demonstrate to the university that things are working, they would come to you wanting to invest the resources in this. Going to them saying, I have an idea, I think this would work, I've seen this work in Hong Kong, maybe it will work here as well, give us 15 points and $1 million, that rarely works, right?
Yeah.
So really can start very humble and small and then grow from that, like more like a 5-year plan rather than just like immediate execution. And then less risk of you getting burned out or things completely falling apart. Yeah. But it is tough. Education is tough in general. I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming and giving that talk. It was very inspiring. You talked a little bit about these kind of big collaborations, the team science thing, which I think is the standard way of working in high energy physics, but it's very new to things like psychology. Right. I think it's demonstrated its usefulness because it's overturned a lot of the findings of rock star scientists from the past.
Okay.
There are some obvious disincentives for individuals to working that way because they want to be the rock star scientist, I guess. How can we overcome that?
Can you say a word or two about the incentives that go counter to collaborations?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about being that first author, or in psychology being the last author, because you're the guy with the funding.
For the promotion, you mean, or for hiring?
Promotion. The whole global incentives system for science.
Yeah, these are systemic issues that are a little bit above my pay grade. I have my opinions, but we also need to be humble about that. Our ability, so my ability to change anything in Hong Kong and University of Hong Kong is very limited. I've been trying for 6 years to promote all sorts of things, like change the way that you assess researchers. Even when you hire, having them add we care about open science. Please indicate in your application how you practice open science. That took a very long time just to get that in there. And of course, once it's there, nobody actually looks at us. You know, they don't evaluate this. It's just there. So hopefully we get better candidates, but we don't really actually look at these things. So my ability as an assistant professor in a large organization in a foreign country is very limited. So we need changes. That said, it seems like Europe is changing things, and it's changing things because there's also things that are happening. So Netherlands had a big shock in 2011 that kind of started Netherlands wanting to take lead on open science. So they've completely revamped the way that they're doing science. DORA is something that every institution, like openness and in assessment, can endorse in order to move from impact factors, number of publications. But these are like on the system level. On the lower level of us individually, why would we do this? So I already showed you like my example. I know universities don't value this as much, but it's just a side effect that me just doing data collection and going over some drafts, I have like 9 publications on my CV in journals that I would never get into on my own. I'm not even submitting there because first I don't believe in these journals. I don't think they're open science enough. I don't believe that they're really high impact and high quality. For me, what I gained from that is that I created a new team, core team, and I really wanted to know how to optimize that. You can sit by yourself or talk to people or come to sessions and hear how people are telling you what's the best way to manage a team. But I really want to learn from, you're asking a good team, who manages this? How are they able to get 200 people, different labs, very complex data collection, everything written together? So to me, it's just a journey of learning and discovery so that I learn a lot of skills from what it is that they do, and then I can implement this in my own research. So I think almost everything that I try with the open science community and these open science collaborations is to learn. I think one of the very humbling things is that when I used to do things on my own, I had a training like at the business school. Now I know that most of this training is misaligned, to say the least. But I thought that I had a good grasp of what science was. But in every one of the collaborations, even our collaboration, like I learn a lot. It's not that I have everything. Every time I get some feedback, I learn from somebody else. Even early career researchers, even undergraduate students, from coding to writing to how to seek out information and then how to manage things. So if you do things on your own, you will never learn. If you do things with students, there's some limitations to that. If you collaborate with all these amazing scholars from different places in the world, the skills that you can gain, the sky is the limit. So that's what I gain from that. So I think that's my incentive. And I think that once universities see that impact, give it like 5-10 years, they will start assessing based on this. We're just like the initial stages on that. But yeah, if you're part of collaboration, just need to give it a little bit of time because we're very late. In business, we're even, I talk to people in management about collaborations and working together and leveraging things. It's very, very slow. Will take another 5 to 10 years after psychology. But this is starting in psychology, so I think need to be a little bit patient and keep doing things and showing impact. The fact that this works, that we're having these kinds of outputs, that it is getting to some of the what's considered to be very reputable, impactful journals, that's already a signal that there is the potential of things changing. But we'll see.